So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the trip. And I'll start with Italy, even though that wasn't the first place on the trip. And I went to Lama Tsongkhapa Institute, which was where I used to live in 1979 to 1980. And it's the origin of my Sam story. So I hadn't been back there since 1982. And it was just amazing to go there because the institute was an old castle. And when I lived there, you couldn't even walk in all places of it because it was just crumbled up and in disrepair. And now the whole place has been renovated and it's beautiful. And they have dormitories and lots of rooms and switch things around, and it's really lovely. And they have many, many courses going on simultaneously. I don't know how they do it, but somehow they do. With lots of people coming, there was two public holidays while I was there, and both days there were just so many people from the general public coming to the Institute. These people are not Buddhists, but somehow the Institute has the word about it has gotten out. And it's in this little tiny village, so it's not like it's in a major metropolitan area. But it was flooded with people going to listen. So it was really inspiring to see what had happened in the 37 years since I had been there, and to think that maybe a little bit of what I had done had, contributed to its now, amazing ability to spread the Dharma far and wide. So I gave 4 days of teaching, special talks just for the monastics. And so we have these recorded audio and video. I think we'll put them up on the website. And I think some of you may want to see them, may want to watch them. They asked really good questions, and they had their situation is such. Kaz and I were talking about it, how it's different from the Abbey, because at the Abbey we started as a monastery, and then we invited the public and the lay people to come for courses and retreats and things like that. And so people definitely feel like they're coming to a monastery when they come here. In Italy, it started as a Dharma center, and so people gradually ordained, and then the Sangha just kind of somehow fits in there. But they don't live together. They don't do many activities just with the Sangha. So it's a completely different kind of feeling. It's not a community. They don't function as a monastery together, although there's probably as many monastics there as we have here. Yeah, so we had 4 days. We had really interesting talks, and it was very, very good. I appreciated their questions. And then one day, we were there during Tsok Day. So after Tsok, I was coming out of the meditation hall, and Massimo, who had been the director for part of the time that I was there, way back when, before Sam took over and became director. And Massimo and we've always gotten along quite well. And we were coming out, and Massimo turned to me and he said, much to my surprise, he said, "I really want to apologize to you for how you were treated while you were here." And Massimo never did anything, but I was floored, totally floored. And I had to take a long walk after that because I couldn't, because I never even felt that the need for an apology was necessary. Because for me, my whole experience there was Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe showing me that I needed to work on my anger. Yeah, I mean, that's what the whole Sam story was about. So never did I look at my experience there as one that ever required an apology, because it was all me having to deal with my anger, which was totally, I didn't need to be that angry. I didn't need to have anger at all, even a little bit. It was completely, my stuff. So I was just floored with an apology. I just really. And I realized in thinking about it afterwards that in having the attitude that I did, which was that I really never considered the idea of an apology, and that by having that attitude, I saved myself 37 years of pain. Yeah, because if I had held on to that for 37 years thinking that I was owed an apology, I would have suffered for all that time. Yeah. So it really emphasized to me, that whenever something like that happens, to just always take it as this is my stuff and for me to learn by it. And if I use it in that way, I save myself so much pain. Yeah. Totally save ourselves pain. Yeah. So that was a big teaching for me there. Yeah. And I was also surprised when I met the new spiritual program coordinator. She made a comment about having heard about me being there. And so somehow people knew about it. People who are now, who weren't there, 37 years ago, which also surprised me. Yeah. And I saw one of my friends who was there back when, who is now a monk. And so it was very nice seeing him as a monk. And he, I think, picked up on how I was feeling about all of this. It was really very, very nice. I will tell you tomorrow a little bit about the retreat I led. It was a 4-day retreat, and it was on working with anger, interestingly. And yeah, and I brought in NVC, so I want to tell you about how I combined NVC with that. It was really, and some new thoughts I've had about NVC since doing that.
Do the monastics there do pasada together or anything like that?
Oh,
None of that?
they could only do, because the nuns there's no bhikshunis there. The monks, a couple of them are bhikshus. They have two geshis who are bhikshus, but they can only do posada if all of the bhikshus are there. So sometimes they do it. Then the nuns come in just for their brief thing. The whole thing's in Tibetan, so nobody really understands completely, but they get some idea. Otherwise, I was there during one posada day, or no, posada was the next day. I can't remember. But basically, when there aren't enough of the bhikshus, then they didn't do anything together. They didn't do Varsa or Pravarana.
So I was thinking, it's interesting how even though you felt an apology wasn't necessary or warranted, there was a need from their side to do that. And sometimes it reminds me that sometimes the nicest thing we could do, or the most compassionate thing we can do, is to allow somebody to have that apology and accept that, even though we didn't feel like there was one there. And I guess be gracious about that in some way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think from Asimo's viewpoint, he thought an apology was necessary. I remembered the thing now that I was going to say, that because I was there and my conflict was primarily a lot with Sam, who was the director, and then also I was the gegu or disciplinarian of the monks, and macho Italian men do not like having a woman in charge, and so there was a lot of part of my anger was in having to deal with that situation, and people, me trying to adhere to Lama Yeshe's wish for how the Sangha should function, and people telling me, no, we're not going to do that. Yeah, like go to morning puja and, have to knock at people's door and say, get up. No. Anyway, you get the idea. It's like, but this is what your guru said. Everybody should be at morning puja. Anyway, so it was very interesting for me because, I connected with a number of the lay people who were at the Institute when I was there 37 years ago, who are still there now. It was really wonderful seeing them because I had a great relationship with the lay people. And then in the process, I was asking them about some of the monks who had been there. Yeah. All of them except one have disrobed, and all the others, almost all of them who have disrobed, have become students of a controversial teacher and are not doing really well. And and so that made me feel really bad that all these people who started out so well then had gone with a controversial teacher. And one of them, one of the nuns, who's a very good friend of mine, had said that one of those monks, who's now a lay people, said the only one thing he regrets is that now he can't go to His Holiness Dalai Lama's teachings. And she and I looked at each other like, if you regret not being able to go to His Holiness's teachings, you need to change something in what you're doing so that you can go to those teachings. Because His Holiness is so valuable and His teachings are so precious. And so she and I were just, like, what is this person thinking? Yeah? And how did they get themselves tangled up in that kind of mental knot? Anyway, my purpose in telling you all of this is that, lots of times when we do confession or when we read our bodhisattva vows or our Vinaya precepts, we look and we say, how come there's this precept, Or we do our confessions and we're confessing different things. Like, how could anybody ever do this? Well, if you live long enough and you stick around long enough, you see that people do these things that are listed in the precepts and listed in the confession ceremonies. And you realize that, these people start out on one foot and then kind of wind up going down a slippery slope. And how important it is that we purify now and that we use other people's slippery slope to make a very strong determination in our minds, never ever in this life or future lives, to act like that or to think like that. Yeah? So instead of judging those people, to say this is a lesson for me, because who knows what kind of karma I have on my mind stream that could twist my mind into some weird state, And so purification is just so incredibly important while we have this opportunity and while we have the time and have connections with really wonderful teachers, because we have fantastic teachers coming to the Abbey and we have a strong connection with His Holiness. And, to really do that purification now and to make prayers for these other people. Yeah.